our poor other viewers there on YouTube. Now, we should be live on YouTube as well. Good. And on that note, there's somebody who has made a few comments on one of my videos. If that person would like to come into chat and announce themselves, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, I don't really care. I don't really care about you or your opinions about anything at all. And I'm done engaging with you at all. Show up to stream and say what you have to say, or no, there is no other or. That's it. That's it. Or I simply don't care. And I'm gonna dedicate 0 time and energy to you. Cool. Good. Now that that's out of the way, we're live on YouTube. JD Vance said that there were going door to door next. What does that sound like? No, I mean, it clearly, right, that's, they're being so mask off about it. That's the thing that's really, the determining, well, it's the, what's the word, what is it I'm trying to get across? It's about to be very clear who is willing to simply be compliant and who is not willing to go along with the lie, right? When with the recent events in Minneapolis, there's no question. If you watch the video, there's no question that a bunch of people tried to attack a United States citizen, and that person fled for their life, which should be a right? That should be something that people are allowed to do, whether or not they are a United States citizen or not, right? You should have the right to flee for your life if you fear for your life. And if she didn't, if she doesn't, none of us have any rights. Let's be clear, right? What we have seen is a public execution, enforcement of state power through a public execution. Right? What we do from here will determine whether or not that becomes commonplace, whether that becomes an accepted norm that people are just going to go with, because there's lots of media outlets still who are begging the question, well, it seems like there might be evidence that the officer, not an officer, not a police officer, not military officer, some dude hired by a federal bureau who is supposed to vet and train those people and not hire people who have a history of, right? Because it's been revealed that particular individual has a history of escalation and violence and not dealing appropriately with situations involving the public. Surprise, surprise. Right? If there is, if media outlets continue to push the narrative, or even to allow us to entertain the question. There is no question. If you've seen the video, there is no question. And if you are begging the question, if you are asking the question, you need to take a very serious look at your ability to discern reality. Because it might be the case that propaganda is more powerful than your ability to understand what is actually true about the world around you. In fact, demonstrably so. Categorically so. I suggest another Leo org. I'll put the music. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Still watching the video I posted today? Yes, we are still watching the video that you posted. So there's going to be a few things that I want to talk about today, and not all of them are going to seem like they are directly related. They are all obviously related, but in ways that will need some unpacking, and we'll be doing that for days. So we're still going to talk about the methods for formalizing consensus. That is going to be one of the main things that we talk about today. And I'm going to finally tie that in with the overarching problems that we have with establishing quote unquote truth, or a capital T truth, or some kind of referent around which our ideas have coherence and sameness. Right, that there's a disconnect, and we've talked about this disconnect a number of times throughout the course. Sometimes, throughout the stream, sometimes I refer to this as the postmodern problem. The postmodern problem is that we don't have unifying truths around which we can coalesce and to have meaningful discourse about how to build society, because the mechanisms of society have become controlled by disparate ideas, by disparate values and truths and axioms of value that don't coincide with each other. That there's problems with translation. It's the postmodern problem. So we're gonna tie those ideas in. And again, to remind everybody, this is in a part of the project that we are putting together about how to or whether to police and regulate ourselves internally. This is still part of that same conversation. We haven't really moved away from that conversation. We've just moved into another part of that. And the outline for that is available on the Discord as well. And let me go ahead and make sure this... It's been a long time since I've checked this. And make sure that this link still works. Can someone do me a favor and see... Well, I guess I could just click it. Make sure that I don't think it should have expired. But before I get into all of that, because that's what we are doing today, but before we get into all of that... yeah, it looks like it's working. There are a few things that I want to cover, or talk about, or touch on. Right, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and how we direct ourselves, how we think about how we spend our time, I think is very important. It is for me anyway. I am currently without a vehicle. The radiator on my van had a crack in a small valve at the top of the radiator. It's a valve that's removable, but is not replaceable because the manufacturer doesn't make that piece. I have to buy a whole radiator anyways, and replacing the whole radiator is actually the big headache. So I'm without a vehicle at a time that I want to be out on the streets demonstrating and and organizing. So that's, well, I've already ordered one. That's what this box is right behind me. It's that's my radiator. So it just has to go in. It's a matter of me having the time, and I've been sick, right? So I mentioned that as soon as I got back from visiting my family for my mother's memorial, so like I've been a little bit busy, right? My mother passed, and then I spent a bunch of time with my family after her passing, and then I came home and got sick immediately. So I just haven't had an opportunity to fix the van, and it snowed. It snowed a little bit this morning. It snowed heavily all morning. So there's a pretty thick blanket. It looks like the sun is out and it's starting to melt a little bit, but we're supposed to get more snow. And so I think that it's probably not going to happen this weekend either, because I have to do it in the front yard. I don't have a garage or a place that I can just get it indoors real fast. So anyway, it's important for me to think about how I'm spending my time, because I would like to be, making signs and out there shaking my fist and organizing. So because I can't go out and do things, I have to remember that part of this, the reason why you all show up and the reason why I'm doing this in the first place, is part of the prefiguration process that we are all engaging in and learning how to do, so that we can become revolutionary people. And that is an important way for me to be spending my time, is helping us figure out the prefigurative process, engaging in the prefigurative process, to becoming those kinds of people that are doing revolutionary things. So with that in mind, there's a few things that I want to touch on before we launch into the main content for today, which is primarily I'll do a quick teaser. So we will talk some about, we're of course going to do the video that Jane put in the Discord, and we'll talk about anarchs. Why is the size of everything different? Did YouTube do something that I didn't even notice, because I don't notice those kinds of things? Because this should be the right view, and it's not. I know that this is not the right view. That shouldn't be the right view either. I know it shouldn't matter that much, but I find it very frustrating. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It'll be okay. I'll get over it. Maybe. Maybe we'll see if I'll get over it. So we're gonna talk about the Anarch video, because I haven't seen it and I want to watch it and get Anarch's take on it. We might revisit the Andrewism video that talks about the same kind of thing, but I kind of doubt that. This might come up. There's some stuff in here that might come up, and I might just play this video to help explain some things that I don't want to put all the words to myself. But most likely we won't need to watch this. But it's here, but we will probably watch some of this. This is a video that we've watched from Andrewism before, so I don't intend to watch the whole thing, but we'll probably watch the first few minutes of it anyway. At some point. This is something that is brand new. This just dropped. This video is like an hour and change old, and is actually in line with the stuff that we're talking about. So this will probably be how we start the conversation of consensus, and we'll be tying in again these ideas about our inability to have fundamental truths around which we can coalesce and have the same kind of ideas. right? Which is all part of the same thing, where we are having the conversation about leftists and whether and how to police each other and ourselves, etc. So, no, it's funny. I thought that that's what it was going to be, but the answer is actually kind of better, and it ties directly into a kind of ethical moralism that we'll talk about a little bit. So it yes, actually. So where I want to start is so funny that because I didn't think that, because I was like, it's got to be labor, it's got to be our labor, it's got to be. But we'll get there. And no cheating. Don't you go look ahead. Though I mean, I can't tell you what to do. You're the boss of you. but this is where we're going to get started now, because I think that this is. Let me preface this a little bit. So yesterday I was really pretty jaded, and I don't think I realized just how jaded I was. I was in somebody else's stream. Oh, it might have been the Noisy Immigrant. Yes. Noisy asked, Americans, do you think that there's any chance that this event, what's going on in Minneapolis right now, has a tendency to become something more? And yeah, absolutely. 100 Noisy was absolutely popping off yesterday. Well, actually, all of their streams for the last week have been fire, really. And that's something I'll probably talk about. Could you give a shout out to Noisy? I would appreciate that, Matt. Because yeah, popping off is absolutely right. But asked any Americans if you thought there was a chance that there was that this would become something more, that this would that this would generate some kind of momentum. And I was really very just immediately no. What I expect what I expected is based on my material analysis. Thank you. I appreciate that, Matt. You are just a hero for doing mod work. So thank you. I believe, maybe believe still, I believed at that time that we simply don't have the material conditions, that too many Americans are too comfortable, are too insulated, or believe themselves to be well enough insulated from what is going on, right? Because America, for much of our mythologized history, so for much of America's mythologized history, Americans have been largely insulated from the coercion, which is a necessary component, the coercion and extraction and assimilation necessary for capitalism. For there to be first world countries, there must be third world countries. That's part of the plan. That's on purpose. It's not just that economics worked out that way. Economics was built systematically to ensure that would always be the case, that there would be certain winners and certain necessarily losers, right? This is American hegemony. This is the global West hegemony that has ruled the globe for the last 8 or 9 decades. But it's important to remember first that the American hegemony really is only a few decades old. In historical context, this kind of thing has happened over and over and over and over and over again. So this is not new, right? And that realization is helpful. That this is something that humanity has been through before, and we've had revolutions, and those revolutions have sometimes built something that was not shittier than what was before it. And so we have some reason to be hopeful in that way. But there are other reasons for us to be hopeful, and one of the most important reasons for us to remain hopeful is for hope's sake. Because if we give up, there is no hope, right? And it's important for us to remember that. And it was another chatter, somebody who I don't know, and who I hope I get to thank and have other interactions with. That another chatter helped me, right, to put things into perspective. And that's not the words that they said. I can't remember the words that they said, but that was my takeaway, right? That that I was being far too casual about where we are in history. That I shouldn't treat this like just another Wednesday was some part of how they'd phrased it. But that if we remain resigned that hope isn't there, then we will miss the opportunities. Right? That's a very important thing for us to remember, is if we are not looking for the opportunities because we have given up hope, we will miss the important material opportunities that we have to do something. So on that note, it was British hegemony at one point, and that's actually really a helpful model too. Is that we can see the rise to colonial imperial power of Britain, and the way that went for them, because here they are struggling for relevance at all. They are doing their best to ride the coattails of the United States, who has the best chance of maintaining some kind of global control over this part of the hemisphere, this part of the northern hemisphere. But the reality that is hard to see from our insulated perspective here in the United States is that the rest of the world is moving on without us. They are working together to do so, and we in the United States, we are by far more than simply outnumbered. When you think about the power, and we're going to talk about power an awful lot today, and the emergence of power and the creation of power, and that's the other thing that I want, right? No, I don't have it over here, but we'll talk about dual power, and how to build dual power, and the importance of us going out and figuring out how to. So now let me get to this. I'll play this video. Good. It's enough time for me to go to the bathroom and be right back too. So I'll be right back.
Right now, people keep asking, why don't Americans go on strike? And even more Americans keep giving common excuses. Fear. Fear of losing housing, healthcare, a job, fear of losing the little stability they think that they still have. But the question that no one is asking is, who taught us that not acting was safe? While fear isn't irrational, it is political. Under capitalism, survival is individualized. Housing is private, healthcare is tied to employment, food and safety are commodified, so risk feels personal instead of collective. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. When people are forced to survive alone, they begin to think alone, which is absolutely not human nature, but rather a system producing obedience. This is why some of the most defeatist arguments come from people who still think they have something to lose. Lenin identified this contradiction. He wrote that layers of relative comfort inside capitalism often produce hesitation rather than resistance, because the insecurity is masked. This is a hostage psychology. This is also something that Marxists call silent compulsion or mute compulsion. Workers not held in place primarily by force, but by contradictions that punish resistance automatically. When you lose your job, your healthcare, your housing, the system disciplines you without needing soldiers on the street. And this is exactly what makes people say, this will never work, before it even begins. But history contradicts defeatism. This is where this sort of American amnesia becomes dangerous. Let's talk about Seattle, the city that I live in. You may notice this poster behind me at times, commemorating the Seattle General Strike in 1919, the very first general strike in the United States, where over 60,000 workers shut down the entire city. Transportation and businesses stopped. Workers organized food distribution and essential services. There were no modern labor protections, no unemployment insurance, and a real threat of military intervention. They knew this and they did it anyways. And the only reason it ended was because leadership lacked consensus on how far to escalate it when the National Guard was sent in. In retrospect, Anna Louise Strong said this, "Please pay attention, we must learn from this." As soon as one of these workers was put on a responsible committee, he also wished to stop before there was riot and blood. The general strike put into our hands the organized life of the city, all except the guns. We could last only until they started shooting. We were one gigantic bluff. The workers had the power, but many were not yet prepared to use it fully. We learn from this, we do better next time. We also ignore that strikes built modern America. Almost every protection working people still have in the United States exists because workers did strike. These gains were not gifts from the state, but concessions extracted under threat, our threat. And then globally, workers have not just improved conditions, but reshaped entire governments. All organized responses to unbearable conditions. And across that history, workers have mobilized under conditions worse than those we face now. No protections, no guarantees, constant open violence. They weren't striking because it was safe to do so, because there was a backup plan, something to fall on. They struck because doing nothing already killed them. It got them where they are. We can't let fear have the authority. Are we going to let them get that far? That's what we're doing by sitting back and saying, oh, we could never do it. It'll never happen. I might lose my job. You'll lose your job when they kill you anyways. What we're living with today is alienation, loss of third spaces, collapse of unions, erasure of that working class history, and an ideology that tells us survival is personal responsibility. Antonio Gramsci gave us the clearest framework for this moment. Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. Revolutionary optimism is not pretending that things are easy. It's recognizing that keeping what little crumbs we have under these conditions guarantees our loss. We are already losing what we're afraid to lose. And right now, I'm speaking mostly to the privileged who are only just now realizing they could lose something. Many before you didn't have anything to begin with. So are we going to lose the crumbs we have quietly or together? With intention, with memory of the past, with solidarity with one another? We need to transform our conditions and become something greater. We deserve better. Don't give up. Don't give in to nihilism and defeat.
I found that to be a very inspirational message. This is a content creator that I have not consumed enough of their content, so I'm just trying to make up for that because they seem like they've got a really good analysis and like they really know what they're talking about. I've seen a few of their things, but really not a lot of their things. So that's a content creator that's going to be on my radar a lot more. I thought it had some really. There's a lot to be taken away from this message, and it's not just a message of hope. There is a message of hope, which again we really kind of need, and so this gives us some optimism. So, are we ready to translate? Oh, I wanted to say, welcome in. Good to see you, poor boy soul. Thank you for the like and the follow. That's what I meant to say. Thank you for the follow and welcome in. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you're all having a good day. I forgot to say that at the beginning of stream. Welcome in, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. Yes. So yeah, this right. We need to build solidarity, and we need to figure out how to build dual power structures. So those are going to be the two big overarching parts of the conversation today. And this, this will include the consensus. That's where we're going, Jane. We're almost to the video. So yeah, in fact, I think that this is the last thing that we want to do before the video, probably. Parallel systems, absolutely. So
good morning, John. In your video this week, you were talking about how believing in a hopeful worldview actually makes it more likely that the hopeful stuff will come to pass. I think that this is probably right. I mean, it's hard to tease out because there are moments where it becomes hard to have hope, and part of the reason for that is because the hopeful moments are becoming less likely. But anytime you're thinking like, well, X behavior is going to make like Y outcome in the future more likely, I immediately start thinking about the guy who arguably saved the most lives in human history, who in fact was intending to do research on how to blow people up better. I'll link to a couple of videos about Fritz Haber in the description. We never really know what is going to result in what. Like, if you had told me that we were going to build a global communication network that would succeed in making it just as easy to talk to someone in Nepal as talking to your next door neighbor, I would guess that would result in a world that would be more connected and empathetic and where people's circle of care expanded. But we did that. And it has had, on average, the opposite effect. I think that's very important to try and understand in retrospect why that has happened, but I think just as important is recognizing that no one has time machines. We cannot predict the future. No one knows if X leads to Y, especially if X is happening now and Y is like more than 10 years from now. There are some people in the world who argue that when we're talking about giving or philanthropy, we should be optimizing not just for protecting people today, but we should also be thinking about the people who do not exist yet. We should be expanding our circle of care to people many generations from now. I think that this is like fine in theory, especially when it comes to things that feel like they have a really concrete potential advantage, like making sure that the earth remains fairly livable. But honestly, what I have seen in my 45 years is that we just don't know what's gonna help people in the long term. Again, nobody's got time machines. The future just gets out of focus extremely quickly. But I actually have a framework that I think fixes this. Now, I'm not a moral philosopher, but I am a vlog brother. And having done that for a couple of decades, it seems to me that there's basically just one thing that is very protective against harm being done to people. And that is the belief that lives are valuable. And not just that, but pushing back against the thing that my brain does and that your brain does, where it believes that some lives are more valuable than others. Now,
this might be it. Us. Right? There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. Yeah, I am literally a moral philosopher. And that's, I would love to have a conversation with Hank. I still have a bone to pick with Hank about the crash course philosophy video that they did on deontology, which is wrong. Which is, I mean, and they know, I'm pretty sure, because they took the video down. You have to specifically search for it. You have to go out of your way to find it. It's difficult to, it's no longer a part of their crash course philosophy course anyway. But yeah, no, I would love to have a conversation with Hank, and I'm kind of thinking about generating some kind of a quick response, some kind of 2-minute something that I can say in response to this video, because there's so much to unpack here. So but I'll let them finish their point, and then we'll begin unpacking this.
some amount of this is inevitable. Tie a stranger to one railroad track and my brother to the other one, and I absolutely will pull the lever because I'm not a moral calculator. I'm a human being. But that's maybe a little bit my point. Like, I think there's a real danger in turning yourself into a moral calculator because it disregards the actual path of progress, which is that human lives continue to get more valuable because people in our social and biological and cultural and spiritual context just do believe that. And as we start to assign more value to the lives of people, valuable, that increases the amount of value in the world, which increases the drive to provide better lives for people, which makes people's lives better. And this doesn't happen because somebody in the past was like, let's do some moral calculus and apply it to the future. No, it's just because life is precious. And from that, I'm going to make 2 points. First, since we cannot predict the future, we are likely to be much better at achieving near-term goals, and so that's never a terrible place to focus. But second, and more importantly, I think that it's very possible that focusing on nearer-term goals is actually likely to deliver the better future. Because we have the resources we have today, and the more that we fight to place more value on people's lives, not just saving them, but making them rich and valuable, the faster we get to a world that is structured in such a way that does not treat lives as cheap. The value of life isn't something that we'll discover in the future. It's something that we generate and cultivate in the present. It is a resource that grows the more we insist it exists, and it is the basis for literally all value creation. In short, just as believing in a hope
metaphysically, categorically true.
hopeful worldview actually makes it more likely that the hopeful stuff will come to pass, believing that lives should be full and rich and long today is likely to be the most effective path toward a future where lives are full and rich and long. And that is why all those years ago we started working with Partners in Health and Save the Children during the Project for Awesome, because they are organizations that reject the idea that some lives are more valuable than others. And it's also why the Project for Awesome is such a good and hopeful time every year. And it is coming, and is just around the corner. Put it on the calendar, February 13th to the 15th. And also, if you are the kind of person who might be able to give a little more, you can become a matching donor. We accept donations and checks and stocks and donor-advised funds and credit cards. We'll take your PayPal. We will take a shoebox full of cash. We will not take a shoebox full of cash. But by becoming a matching donor, you help build excitement during the live stream, because at times we're able to double, triple, or even quadruple donations because of matches. If you think you might be able to be a matching donor, you can check out more about that in the description. We do not need to wait on this. We make lives more valuable in the future by insisting that lives are more valuable today. John, I'll see you on Tuesday.
Fantastic takeaways. First is that we can focus on short-term goals, right? We can focus on immediate short-term goals. And if we do focus on immediate short-term goals, then we are piling on to the amount of hopeful energy that can be generated. That's propaganda of the deed. This is to answer your question, poor boy soul. It's yes. Is he any good? Yes and no. He's very lib, or has been very lib for most of his online career as one of the Vlog brothers. But of the two, Hank seems to be moving considerably more left. This is material analysis. This is historical materialism. This is prefiguration to socialism, right? Hank is on the cusp of actual leftism. And I'm pretty sure that they are openly anti-capitalist already, so that's also a good thing. But to the extent that they understand material analysis from a leftist perspective, I haven't seen enough. He's a baby leftist. I haven't seen enough to move him beyond their edging on the cusp of somebody who might be in the ballpark of leftism. Yeah. He has a good moral compass and a good material analysis. Yes, and I will agree with that. And this is let's talk about the metaphysically, this is the case. And there's lots of people that have made this argument throughout history. One of the ancient Greek philosophers that argued about this is Heraclitus. Oh no, I'll have to check my notes. Don't quote me on that. But there was somebody who talked about that man is the source of all value. That when it comes to axiology, so philosophy can be broken up into a few different camps: metaphysics, epistemology, axiology, and logic. Right? So metaphysics is what is. There's also cosmology and ontology under this, right? So creation stories of how things came to be, that's going to be cosmology. And ontology is the study of being, what it means to be a being, and what being means, right? That's what metaphysics is all about. Epistemology is the study of truth. That's my favorite thing, and that's the thing that I talk about the most, right? How we come to know things in the world, right? And I'm the kind of person that argues it's not the world that is, and then we come along and discover the way that things are. That's not the way that our apprehension works. We understand the world through certain kinds of mechanisms. And those mechanisms are not born innately into us. Those mechanisms are trained and conditioned and the product of our socialization and our being interpolated beings. Yes, people attribute value to the things, not that the things have intrinsic value. That is a fantastic way to phrase it, Jane. Thank you. A much simpler way to say it than the long roundabout way that I went to. But what it comes down to is that there is no value in the universe. Universe is not the kind of thing that values. It is not that kind of thing. It doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have a will that we can discern, that it wants particular kinds of things or thinks particular kind. Humans do. Right? The universe doesn't have value systems. The universe is efficient and is a better. That's what the universe understands of energy. We invent value. That value is something that we consider valuable. Is only meaningful metaphysically because we are valuing beings. This is where our value comes from. And all other values, all other declarations about what is good or right or just, all of those things derive from that one singular origin. The value that you have as an evaluator. That you value things means that you are necessarily deserving of moral evaluation. Right? That's the root of meta-value systems, of all morality, of all ability to distinguish one thing from a better thing. So 100% true. And in this, the reason why I'm making such a big deal about this is precisely because my knee-jerk reaction when I read this title was labor. Right? It came out of my mouth. I said it out loud when I saw the title. I said labor. Right? Because that's what we are conditioned almost dogmatically to think about. And there is great value, I believe, to thinking about the value of labor. However, this is a better value system. That valuable beings are valuable because they have the ability to evaluate. And that there comes with this a whole lot of moral suppositions which are necessarily true about the world. Which are incontrovertibly true about the world. Oh, and this is a good tie-in. I didn't expect this to tie in so well. I'm not going to be able to undo the thing that I just did. Damn it. It's okay. I don't have to be a giant baby about it. That's okay. See, it's fixed. So this is we're going to talk about that in a minute. Where to go? Kiyomitara's article. Right, so, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time diving into this. It'll be a little bit of a distraction today, but this is on the docket because this is a fantastic read. So far, I haven't finished. I've gotten through most of it, but not the entirety of it. But a large part of the background of this article that Kiyomitara has skillfully written has to do with the ways of life, right? The truths which are true for the Maori people, or were true to at one point, to the extent that their communities were virtually immune to capitalism and the influences of capitalism, that the Maori people maintained their lifeways so persistently that officials openly talk about about genocide, about the quote unquote need. Let me change the view so you all can actually see this. That because these people won't change their life ways, we might have to eradicate them by the sword, right? Like literally, right? That they're talking about the need to eradicate these people's way of life because they are living a truth, and that truth is impervious to the corruption of capitalism. Right? Think about the power of that. But that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're talking about, the reason why we are talking about becoming revolutionary people, why we are talking about the potential for revolution in our own countries, is so that we can change the course of how we organize our societies, so that we stop believing that we can by the sword coerce people into the quote unquote right way to live. White being translated as into the white way to live, obviously, right? That's right. That we all know where Stephen Miller is going with this project. We all know where Trump is going with this project. It's the goal is to establish a complete dictatorship with a bunch of willing and compliant people who are so afraid of losing what little protections or what little guarantees or what little securities or safeties they believe that they have, right? And for us to overcome that, all we need to do, right, like it's a small thing, is that we need to build dual state power structures. Dual power structures so that we can create pockets of not freedom, because we can't have that yet, but pockets of slightly less oppression. It probably is lagging. My I'm dropping I was dropping frames for a minute, but it looks like it's on the rebound and it should be better now. Sorry about that. I should have should have hooked my phone up and done it from my phone, but that's all right. Importantly, once values exist independently of use and relation, goods must circulate as bearers of that value. Right? They become commodities even if no one wants capitalism. Good point, actually. And the only thing that prevents obligation and value to commodity is non-dischargeable relational standing. That's why I argue Marxism requires mana. Right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Right. So let's talk about how we build. Well, let's get to this first, right? So, well, not first. First. Okay, so real quick, I want to familiarize everyone with the idea of dual power, which I'll also appeal to an Anarch video. Right, and we're not going to watch the whole thing because we just watched it a few weeks ago. So you can go back and watch the VOD, or if you want, then I'll just share the link for this too. I'll probably be sharing lots of links, but in the very first few minutes of this video, Anarch is going to quickly explain dual power, what it is, and why we should give a shit about it. So I'll let them speak for themselves.
So, what is dual power? This phrase gets used a lot, but we don't ever really spend any time. So, what is dual power? This phrase gets used a lot, but we don't ever really spend any time laying out what it is. And the short description I would give is just that it's the idea that we should make an alternative power structure while the prevailing structure continues to exist. It is essentially lowercase r revolution instead of capital R revolution. We're not trying to train up a militant vanguard and pick up arms and go to work just destroying the state and then hoping everything will just work out afterwards. Instead, the idea is that we create the alternative right here and right now. So what I'm really getting across here is that within our daily lives, we exist within a hierarchical society. All of the structures we exist within are hierarchical. And every time that we get some amount of power, it's because that power was given to us. We have some kind of intermediary that either allows us to have that power or not, and that usually only takes place when them giving us that power benefits them. What we're saying is that we want to create a horizontal power structure, and that it is going to develop its own capabilities, that it is going to develop its own self-reliance, its autonomy from hierarchy. So this is kind of related to the concept of direct action. Direct action is acting without intermediaries. Instead of begging for power from the power structures that be, we make our own power. And I think that this has to take place in 4 different sectors, you might say. I call these.
So I don't think that we need to go into all of the different sectors. If you are interested and you haven't seen this video yet, then I'm just going to share the link and you can go check it out. We've already seen the video on the stream, so we're going to move on and talk about other stuff. Resist their antics by calling it out at the very beginning because we know that they will do, and it's reprehensible. Yeah, and that's right. So let's go back. We are not going to beat the colonizers at their own game. We need to build parallel infrastructure that makes their colonization unnecessary. That is absolutely true. Let's put that to a lot more different words so that it's more clear to those for whom it might not already be clear. A good let's talk about praxis. Let's talk about good examples of dual power structures that you might be able to engage with in your community. So if you live close to a large city, that large city will probably have some kind of food bank. That food bank isn't run by the government. It'll be run by individuals who have come together, who have collectivized into some kind of organization to accomplish the end of feeding people. They might rely on government subsidies. They might even get USDA shipments, right? The organizations can apply for those kinds of things and do. But that is an example, poor example so far. We'll have to unpack that a lot more. But this is an example of a group of people who have come together, who have created power. Now, we've talked about power a lot on this channel. Remember that the way that our society is structured is there are two primary hierarchies. There are lots of other hierarchies, but there's two primary hierarchies that work together to maintain the structure of your life. And those two things are capitalism and the state. And those two things support each other in complete harmony. Capitalism and the state are best friends, and they form power structures which dominate your life. You have to pay rent. You can't not. And the reason why you have to pay rent is because of capitalism. And the reason why you can't not is because police state will come and beat you out of your home. They will literally do that, right? And those things work together to support each other's power. The power of the police state centralizes wealth and insulates wealthy people from us, from the masses. Right? That's the function of these two things together. These two power structures work together to create your world. Of course, we can also include racism and patriarchy and transphobia and all kinds of other things that are a part of this apparatus. But the two big Hydra heads, if you will, are going to be the state and capitalism. By providing food banks that people can go to and get food at no cost for no labor, it creates for those people a little bit of economic freedom. Now they can spend X more dollars on toilet paper and soap and diapers and other essential things that they would have otherwise had to spend on food, right? That is power. That is what power is. That is a very important expression for understanding the dynamics of power, right? You live in a system. That system creates for you the structures by which you must live. We can create housing initiatives that put people in homes so that they have the opportunity to get back on their feet and to regain control of their lives by giving them a little bit of freedom from having to pay rent or from living on the street. We create power. That's what creating dual power is. It's making situations in the real world which give other people the opportunity to dedicate their time and energy to things other than simply trying to survive. So, because I can't go out and protest, what I would like to do is to encourage any of the viewers here. I know some of you lack the ability, and I don't want to make you feel bad or to shame you by any means. But if you have the ability to go out and protest, go out and protest. There are protests happening all across the country. If there's not a protest happening in a city near you, make one. Just get a stick and a cardboard sign and stand on a corner. Other people will probably show up and stand with you. Right? People are really upset. People really want to show that kind of dissent. Right? So by going to a protest, you are showing your visible dissent, which matters. That is a very important thing. It's not just performatism. If you get hundreds or thousands of people to organize, it makes a statement, right? And if you can contact a media outlet near you and let them know that they need to come out and cover this story, or record it yourself on your phone. Though be careful of what you record and how you record. We've talked about that. I don't think I have any of those videos on YouTube, so I might go through the trouble of talking about that again. Protocols and kinds of security measures, right? You shouldn't try to record people's faces, especially if those people are doing things that might be construed or might be interpreted as antagonistic or as obstruction or things like that, right? So be very careful about what you record and who you record and how you record if you're going to record, but you should, if you have the ability, record and document. We've also talked about methods by which you can become a legal observer. That's not the right word for it. That's getting distracted. We'll talk about that later in a minute, I guess. Right. Go to the protest so that you can make yourself visible, your dissent visible. Go to the protest and be loud about it to your friends and your neighbors and your family, right? Don't just go to the protest, bring people with you. Get other people energized. Get other people angry. Let other people know that there's value in them putting their bodies out in some physical space to show their dissent, because that matters, right? And if you can grow that by spreading that energy to other people, even better, right? But the most important reason for you to go out and protest is because it is the best opportunity for you to meet people in your community who are already doing the organizing, who are already figuring out how to feed people, who are already figuring out how to house people, who are already figuring out how to create legal safeguards for people who are going to protests, right? You can find out about what is going on and who's doing the doing in your community by going to the protests and looking for those people. Who is in charge? Who's directing efforts? Who do other people look up to when it comes to when a police person shows up, right? When the police show up, who do we look to help direct the energy and the direction of the people who are there? Because there will probably be someone that people are looking up to. And if there is nobody that people are looking up to, maybe maybe this is your time to shine. Maybe this is your time to step up and tell people what to do. Tell people how to avoid kettling. Teach people how to de-arrest if they don't already know those kind of tactics, because people don't generally know those kinds of tactics. So, and if you don't know those things, you should educate yourself on those things. We've talked about it on the channel. We've watched lots of videos and talked about lots of different recommendations for those kinds of strategies. And that's what you need to be doing, is going out to protests and meeting people, joining organizations, getting involved with people who are already doing the things. Right? You don't have to invent the wheel. You don't have to figure out how to start creating power structures. I guarantee you there are already people doing it in your community. Mega mechanical decolonization is prefiguration. Yes, that sounds so metal, right? So there needs to be a metal band. I guess I'll have to create one. I know how to play the drums. If anybody wants to put together a very anarchist communist band. Bring a flag, a sign, and stand on a busy overpass. That's it, right? Greta Thunberg is the model. In case you are unaware of Greta Thunberg's origin story, Greta Thunberg became famous because she stopped going to school on Fridays. She was still going to school 4 days a week, but she stopped going to school on Fridays, and she stood on a busy intersection corner with the sign on Fridays for several months before the media picked it up, and all of a sudden, right, Greta Thunberg has a platform, is informing people, is affecting material change in the real world with her words. That's awesome. You know, and it started from somebody standing on a street corner with a sign. Exactly, protests are experiments in social organization. After all, it's called a protest. I like that. It's punny, and it's true. I have a printable zine template that you can make. Hey, do you really? You can make with an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, stapler, photocopier, and scissors. You can handwrite a zine with tips, a copy at the library, and assemble on site as you hand them out. Yeah, that's when I was a college student. One of the things that I would do is where I went to college, there were you would get X number of prints in a year. You could go to the library and print things off for free, but you could only use so many. But because I never printed anything off, I always read the actual books. You know, I'm actually that nerd who went to the library to touch the books. And because I never had to print anything off, I used all of my print. I would get with people who were doing protests and organizing and be like, "Hey, you need some prints? I can do you color, right?" And so that's the part of my when I was doing the information about Occupy Wall Street. I was using my free prints for that too. Yes, we are watching the video that you posted next, Jane. Thank you for helping me keep on task, because that's right where we're rolling right into. Because we need to be able to work together. And sometimes when we're trying to work together, we don't agree on things. And when we don't agree on things, there are things that we can do to troubleshoot, right? And that's I meant to spend a little bit more time outlining the stuff in this book, because it is a good read. It was a fantastic recommendation. Trashnomancer, I think, is the one that recommended this. But this is kind of a long version of what I think that this is going to be about. Really, it's more about identifying certain kinds of toxic behaviors or problematic attitudes when it comes to trying to organize. This is about identifying things that are going to interfere with your ability to have consensus, more than what to do when you can't get consensus, which I think that this is going to be more directed at that. So good. Again, Jane, thank you for helping keep me on task.
Hey everyone, Anarch here, and this is another episode of Anarch Abridged. The topic of today's episode is going to be, if we can't resolve our differences through consensus, how do we resolve that problem? So it should be said right off the bat that this is kind of a niche question, right? I'm dealing with a problem that mostly anarchist theorists are having to deal with, but it also has some practical implications in the sorts of structures we build in the modern day. So let me give a little background to explain what I'm talking about here. When I present structures for coming to agreements, decision-making structures in my videos, the most common question I get asked is, what do we do with those who disagree or those who don't go along with the majority? And this has actually been a pretty common question throughout the history of the movement as well. There's kind of two different categories where we might have this problem. Both in the organizations we make today, the sort of revolutionary vehicles that we create in order to take us into a different world, but also in a future society. So in answering these questions, I'm trying to give answers that apply in both, but I'm probably going to have to discern between them when I am giving answers as I proceed here. So I'm sorry if that's a little bit of a long-winded preface here, but I just would like to note that this video is probably not one of those videos that blows up and goes wide. This is one of those that is really meant to answer a common question among anarchists and libertarian socialists and so on. First, I want to say that the process of consensus is meant to come to agreements. If people disagree with the decision that is being made by the body that they're part of, consensus is aiming for a unanimous vote. And that's true of all forms of consensus. There's even forms of consensus which you might call like weak consensus or modified consensus. I provide a version that I would call modified consensus in After the Revolution. But in every form of consensus, the main goal is to arrive upon unanimous agreement. And many people ask, like, well, how? The answer is you're trying to listen to everybody's concerns as you're proceeding through the decision-making process. You're not just going, oh, we got a majority vote, we're done. Instead, what's happening is if you have people who are not in agreement, who have problems, those people are supposed to bring their problems to the rest of the decision-making body, and then everybody's supposed to deliberate over the problems that have been presented. Now, ideally, the person who has these problems could provide what is called a friendly amendment. The friendly amendment is basically just a way to modify the proposal at hand to make it to where it would garner their vote. And in my experience, friendly amendments can solve the vast majority of all problems and disagreements. So I just want to put that up front. Friendly amendments are generally enough to get to unanimous agreement. But as we've described, we are both trying to answer the question for our organizations
and we're trying to answer the question for a more developed revolutionary, post-revolutionary society, a society that has to make decisions at a very, very large scale now, with thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people involved in those given decisions. So what I want to say then is just that obviously you're not going to get full unanimous agreement in a society that's making decisions at that scale. It's natural that you're always going to have people who simply disagree with the majority. And that includes both people who they disagree with the majority because the majority is wrong in an objective sense, and people who disagree with the majority because they want to be power hoarders, that they themselves are the ones that are dangerous. So it should be said that, that a minority in voting is not always they're not always the good guys. Sometimes they are purposely trying to put the brakes on the process of.
This is a very good point, and it's one that's also brought up in this book, actually, for looking out for these kinds of situations where we don't know what people believe in their heart of hearts. We don't know what their motivations are. We don't know what their intentions are. We can only look for certain kinds of attitudes and behaviors, and based on certain kinds of attitudes or behaviors, make certain kinds of recommendations or make certain choices in response to certain kinds of behaviors. So, hey, look at the East Coast time. If you are in a state where cannabis is legal, please, by all means, feel free to medicate. I will be medicating myself after the stream. Good. Right. So, that's all I wanted to stress here, is that we are not going to do any credit to building consensus by accusing people of trying to subvert the process. We are not going to do any favors to ourselves or to our organizing by pointing our fingers at other people and saying, they're trying to sabotage, they are trying to grab power. We want to make sure that when we are attempting to build consensus, that we are not engaging in toxic behaviors ourselves by shutting down certain ideas because we don't like them, or because we think that they're silly, or that we belittle people or their ideas, which also can kind of happen in there. So just throwing some clarifications out there.
Development. They are trying to stop a more equitable society from being created. And, obviously we see this within our current republics, is that you always have some kind of not only conservative, but a sort of reactionary, regressive portion of your society. I do not suspect that when we create a post-revolutionary society that we will have none of those people. I suspect we might have fewer of them because I think the structure that we've created sort of encourages their existence. But I do not believe you will ever create a society where there will not be conservatives.
And this is a good point, too. We will, if we have built consensus systems correctly, we will commonly have dissenters. And that's not just an okay thing, it's actually a good thing. That's one of the things that we stress here, over and over, is that difference is helpful and good and valuable, And if we've built consensus systems correctly, we will have people who will always disagree with the majority of positions. and that's okay, right? Anyways, we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure.
They may be a very different kind of conservative because we would have a different default social understanding. But you're always going to have people that are conservatives in some sense, that they don't want things to change. They don't want things to progress. They think the way things is now is good. And you're also going to have people who want to move backwards. You'll always have fascists, people who are trying to return to some idyllic past, and they don't like the way society is now. They don't like progress. So I just want to concede those people are going to exist in every kind of society that you've got. Also, the majority is not always the good guys. As we said there just a minute ago, it's possible that you can have some kind of racial or ethnic or ideological minority who are actually in the right, and the majority of people are horrifically wrong. They have these sort of aggressive beliefs. They are themselves racist, or they are bigoted in one form or another. The majority is also not always right. So I just want to put that up front. Okay. First, I want to say, insofar as that there might be structural, fixes to the problem. If we imagine, for example, that there was some oppressed minority that, they are essentially just being shut out from the decision-making process. And people don't want to include them or want to make decisions which might harm them. One kind of structural solution might be able to create councils that are of that oppressed minority that are always able to intervene and help change the decisions that are being made, to offer their sorts of amendments and to prevent the damaging decisions from being carried out. That's one solution. That solution's actually used in Rojava, for example.
Yeah, this is an example of fluid emergent leadership, which is an okay thing in anarchism. It's okay to have, and leaders is not the right, not really a good fit here, but this is the same concept as fluid emergent leadership. That there might be situations in which it's important or useful to elevate certain people to help the broader community understand something better. And that something might be their own oppression or their own marginalization or the way in which the majority is structured in a way that doesn't contribute any help or aid to these people specifically. Right. And so there might be times where we do create hierarchies, but those hierarchies should not be static. We are not creating positions that are going to now be necessary positions. We create positions with the goal specifically for those positions to make themselves irrelevant. That's the way that leadership should work in anarchist or in flat systems, that we might have need or use sometimes to create hierarchies, but the goal of those hierarchies should be explicitly, specifically to eliminate its the need for that hierarchy to exist. And when all of your hierarchical power structures are designed to self-implode, then you have what's called fluid emergent leadership, where people become conditioned to step up and take the reins when it's appropriate, and other people in that group or in that society are accustomed to people stepping up and picking up the reins, and are also comfortable with saying, no, let me help you with those reins, rather than just letting other people take control, right? That we are all responsible members with regard to how our own lives are. And that's something that that we've talked about before. I want to live in a society where there are roads. I don't care what kind of material gets put into the roads. But if people are making proposals about using diesel or about using old rubber tires, then I might go, well, I've got some concerns, right? And I should be able to. There should be venues or arenas for me to bring those kind of concerns up, for those to be recognized, and for those concerns to be treated with dignity and respect in this kind of process.
But it should be said, if everybody's already dead set on their bigotry or their damaging ideology, that may not ultimately make much of a difference unless you give them some kind of veto power, which of course we could entertain the possibility that those councils of the oppressed or of that minority might be given some form of veto power. However, I think there's another set of solutions. And these other set of solutions are often kind of presented as the end-all be-all solution, and that is solutions based in disassociation. So first I want to say, just because two groups disagree, and once again, I want to broaden this back out. We're not just talking about the situation with the oppressed minority anymore. We're talking about all those situations where people might disagree. You kind of have three options, just broadly, okay? Option number one is y'all both just do your thing. The minority of people just simply carry out things as they want to carry them out, and the 90% or whatever, 95% perhaps of people that think otherwise, they just carry out things as they please. But that's not always going to cause problems. An example I've given before is this idea of like, you know, maybe the width of the streets, or what time of day and what time of night that street lights are on, and things like that. You know, you might think of these as just kind of relatively minor. You know, maybe in their area the street lights are on at a different time, and big deal. You know, everywhere else they're on at the time everybody else agreed to, but in this one little place they're on at a different time. Or in this one little place, the streets aren't the same width. You know, you might run into problems later, like transportation or something. But you know, I'm just giving these kind of more trivial examples where it wouldn't really be a problem for everybody to just carry through their different mandates, right? However, I think we can see that that's probably going to be a minority of problems, right? Then we have two other ways of looking at things. Obviously, you have option two, which is just that minority agrees to do what the majority agrees to. You know, that would be a solution. If the minority says, well, we disagree with it, but we'll go along with it anyway, that would be one solution. And I'm not even saying that they'd have to be forced to do so, but instead that they would just willingly do so. And it's possible that would also happen sometimes. In fact, it might happen quite a lot if you know that you have to make a decision, and you know that there's this consensus process. People might just be willing to kind of get the show on the road. You know, I disagree with it, but we'll try it anyway, right? That's option number two. And then you've got option number three, which is the one I was alluding to a minute ago, and that is disassociation. They basically are saying, we cannot continue to associate, we cannot work together, we are going to have to go our separate ways. And this concept of disassociation is kind of the one that I was wanting to focus on a little bit, because I think that there are some interesting complexities in here that aren't always really spoken about, but are relevant. So one thing I want to say is this idea of disassociation. At first, it kind of sounds simple. You know, oh, okay, the groups disagree on what should be done. They go their separate ways. But that's not really simple once you realize that the associations, these federations of councils that are supposedly supposed to be running everything, have basically complete control over how everything is distributed in society, right? They determine how goods and services will be rendered. They determine, you know, where all of these supply chains are directed and so on.
Right. There's a massive complication with the ability for members of a society to disassociate from consequences or decisions made by a whole society. That's that's kind of what we're alluding to, is that for a lot of the kinds of horizontal structures that we would like to build, those horizontal structures would create bastions of power that people could choose to associate with and choose to not associate with, and that there's no coercion there. When we're talking about implementing whole societal changes, that other people are already living in those societies, there's an added complication here. Somebody who lives in a society and then that society changes the rules and this person doesn't agree with it, it's not easy, right, for them, or reasonable for them to just uproot their whole life and then go find some other place where the community there does things the way that they want to, right? We don't actually get the freedom to vote with our feet. That's one of the most silly expressions that I've ever heard of, and it's just completely unrealistic that people would move to a place simply because they like the laws there. People move to places because their family's there, or their job is there, or because their security and safety depends on it, because they don't know where else to go. They don't know anybody anywhere else. People's living situations are usually determined by a whole host of other much more pressing factors than what the politics happen to be at that particular point in time, right? So that's going to be an element of complication that only applies in situations where members do not have the ability to freely dissociate. If we are just creating gardens where people can contribute some of their time, and if they contribute some of their time, then they can help themselves to any of the fruits and vegetables that they grow, right? And anybody who doesn't want to contribute their time to that doesn't have to. There's no coercion, there's no problem here yet. There's some caveats that I'm guessing that we're going to get this. We're still only halfway through the video, so there's some caveats, and I'm sure that anarchists are going to get to those. So I'm just going to leave it there, and we'll pick it back up in a minute.
So it's not trivial to disassociate from these bodies. Disassociation may mean that you're not provided the things that those associations decide on the distribution of. And I've had some people point out to me, and I'd say fairly so, that, this amounts to a form of implicit coercion. You need to do what that council says, because if you disassociate, then you starve to death out in the wilderness. And, they've noted that this could be considered as like a rising to the same level of implicit coercion that capitalism functions under, like the boss is in.
Yes, and I agree. But that's not just a valid pushback. Yes.
Actually, you have to negotiate with the capitalists and work for a wage, because your alternative is just going out into the wilderness and trying to make it on your own. The same kind of dynamic might be said to be playing out here. If we imagine that when you disassociate, you are not given any of the amenities of society. But this is that complexity I wanted to bring in. And that is, it probably depends on the scale and severity of the thing you were disagreeing with them on. This is almost, in a way, a sort of all-inclusive answer to the previous conundrums.
And real quick, there's an example that I got from a professor of mine that I think really helps to understand the kind of relationships here. So let's say, for example, there's a community of people that does not have access to a well, but they decide that they can pool together their resources, and if enough of them contribute their resources, then they can put together enough to hire somebody to come out and dig a well for them. And let's say that almost everybody in the community does, but there's like 3 or 4 people who just refuse to give any money, any aid, offer any help whatsoever. Should this community of people prevent those 3 or 4 people from using the well that they are all making so that they can all benefit from having a well? Right? Are they going to create laws or rules about who can and cannot use this well? And if they are, right, then why? What's their justification? Actually, right? True, those few people didn't contribute, but they still need water, right? We haven't asked any questions about why they didn't, what their material conditions are, how able they are to contribute, right? And if those things are not factors, maybe they're just assholes. Maybe they're just really asshole people about it. And that still doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, in that kind of situation, there really is no need for coercion. There's no need for everyone to be on board. We can just do the right thing, and all of us will contribute, and all of us, if that's not 100% of us, who fucking cares? Right? We don't have to deprive those people of resources that we think are human rights. Right? We don't need to deprive a few people of the resources that we believe are human rights because they didn't contribute to creating those resources. That's shitty, and that's coercive. That's not justice for anyone. What if they couldn't contribute? Absolutely, right. 3 people is a low amount of dickheads, right? In the example that my instructor gave, that's a community of 20 people. So if there are only 3 dickheads, 20 kind of makes, right? That's a more believable ratio, right? Maybe it's still kind of low. What if it's 50-50 though? Well, and that's the thing. Then we have a situation where we probably can't afford the well. And that's really the reality. It's at that point, it would be up to the community to decide whether or not the ends are worthwhile, right? For them to pursue. If it's 50-50, is this something that is actually valuable? That's a reason to go back to the drawing board, so that we can reach, even if we can't get consensus, even if we can't get 100%, what do we need to do? And this is the point of actually building consensus the right way. Because if you go about building consensus and you don't take the necessary protocols, you're not adequately sensitive, what you do is you turn people off from the process. You alienate people from the process. You give people the impression that the process can't work, right? So at that point, if we have some kind of situation where we're 50-50, then we go back to the drawing board and go, okay, what can we do to rearrange what we need to rearrange to get a higher consensus? And if that means that we have to violate our principles, if that means that we have to violate our truths and create hierarchies, or then those things are off limits, right? Then those things are things that we can't do. Yeah, that's like 15% of all involved, and I think that 15% is probably what you can expect as a reasonable amount of dissent to just about any option, really. And when we're trying to come to consensus, there's a number of reasons why people might not consent. And it might be because we're not doing enough. It's not that they don't like the initiative, that they don't think the initiative is enough, that's going far enough. Some people might think it's going too far. So that there are any number of reasons that people might choose to dissent, and not being in accord with the ends is not necessarily the case. And that's the thing. If you are in an organization or group and you're trying to figure out what to do, usually you're trying to figure out what to do about something, some end that has brought you all together in the first place. And that's that unifying thing, that end goal. What is that vision, right? What do we need to do to re-envision this end goal so that we have more consensus, or at least enough of us so that we can afford to pay for the well? If the community can easily get critical mass to meet the needs of all, there should be no restrictions. No, and that's absolutely the case. All of the people that object to socialism or communism because of the free rider problem, that is not a problem. The free rider problem is a myth. It's been studied extensively and proven time and time and time again that when people work together, then they want to do that. And there might be a few outliers who choose not to, and those outliers won't derail the whole project. One or two people who kick their heels up and decide they're not going to do any of the work, right? Everybody else just goes, well, I don't want to be like that person, right? They are a living example of the kind of ways that people ought not to be. When people can see that, right, in relation to the other people in their community who are doing stuff to help feed and clothe them and give them health care, and to, right, then they're going to give a shit. And they're not going to give a shit about that person who kicks up their heels, and they're not going to care that that person gets meals and gets to stay in a house too. Who cares? Who the fuck cares? If everyone needs to contribute for it to be feasible, a solution and ability-based conversation should be had as a first step. No, absolutely, yeah. If the 85 has enough resources, then the 15 wouldn't matter. Yeah, and that ratio, I think, is pretty easy to just guess that we'll be fine. With that kind of ratio, we'll probably be fine.
And the way that I have laid out the way a federation works, and I might once again note for anybody that's not like super into theory and doesn't know what I mean by that word federation or the word confederation, I'm talking about a nested structure where you have councils at local levels, and then you have the combination of councils that make up a city or a municipal level, and then you have a combination of all those councils that makes up, say, the regional level, and then you've got like the combination of regional levels, which makes up like a national level, and a national level to a continental level, and the continents for the world, and so on. Okay, and I would hope to emphasize here, we're not talking about a representative government where you vote people into all these bodies. Those are bodies of the people at various scales, and they make decisions at those various scales based on who is affected by those decisions. So this is the base premise of how you use federations in order to make decisions in a horizontal function. If you're interested in that, go to the video after the revolution. I explain it to some significant degree there, and I think it'd probably be a good place to start if you're interested in what I'm explaining. But I'm going to kind of take that as a bye.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody's got questions about that idea, I can pause it and explain that, but there you go. You've got a video anyway.
On conclusion, let's move past that. My conception is that the biggest federations...
Most of my regular viewers already you're already familiar with this. We've talked about it several times. So, but for those of you lurkers who are not always here, if any of this is unclear, just stop me. I love to explain stuff.
Because they are making decisions based on who is affected, what is affected in the process, they're going to be making the biggest decisions that affect the largest array of people and things. So you might imagine that the decisions that are made at this the maximum federated scale, say the globe or the continent or something, they're going to be making decisions about, what are the rights of people? To not be oppressed by others. Do they have protections as racial minorities or as oppressed minorities? Do they have some sort of guarantee that they will not be mistreated? Where are the basic rights to have things distributed to you for your basic amenities to be covered? Where are those going to be determined? And what you might imagine is that those would probably be up at the maximum scale. They'd be up at that total global or continental scale, because that's the scale where everybody is affected by those things. Everybody in the Federation, it matters to them what the basic protections that they have from mistreatment, the protections they have, for example, to vote or participate in the process, the protections they have to, be able to either not only to participate, to perhaps just kind of be absentee, those sorts of things. Those would be at the biggest level. And then as you get more and more local, you're dealing with decisions that bear more and more on local conditions.
Kaimatara, this is a fantastic inclusion. Thank you. Interestingly, it goes the other way too. If one person does too much work, they're just as dangerous. Think of our old tribes. If someone who is really good at hunting, it is of utmost importance to make sure they're not the only one that hunts. Why? Because it grants them exclusive specialization, and this bargaining power that creates bargaining power is exclusivity. The inability of others to reproduce the same good or activity without entering exchange. Example, if I can fish and garden, I'm not dependent. If I am made only a fisher and denied land, I must bargain. Right, absolutely. This point is really, it's fascinating how many similarities in life-way knowledge that I have seen in cultures that are on the other side of the globe, because that's a common thing in indigenous populations, indigenous nations here on Turtle Island, also that I've heard reiterated over and over again, is that the idea that when somebody becomes extremely talented in something, they're encouraged to, rather than using that to benefit, rather than doing that thing for the benefit, they enter into a mentorship role where if you're so good at being a hunter, you are now training these 3 or 4 hunters or whoever, or your next protege if you can only train one person, or whatever kind of relationship that you have, right? It changes your role in responsibility. In many nations, I've heard that the people who need the most in groups often receive lots of gifts throughout a year. And at the end of the year, somebody who last year was really quite poor off now ends up with a whole bunch of extra stuff and is now one of the best off in the tribe. And now that they've reached this best off status, what they need to do is give away those things to other people, because they're now impoverished, right? And that the person who has the most is constantly looking for ways that they can give as much as they can, so that other people now have the most and are the givers, right? And it's about maintaining balance among your membership and among your the value that you hold with each other, right? That you don't allow anything to create some kind of power dynamic without entering into exchange or right. And I think that's really, really an excellent point. Yeah, and if they die, everyone starves. It's also a good point, right? Everyone becomes dependent on the super good one, and there's lots of bad things that can be correlated with that for sure.
And that's not to say they're more trivial. It's to say that they deal with things that now only those councils are really dealing with. You know, you get down to the regional level and you're dealing stuff with that only really affects that region. And you get down to the municipal or the city level, and now you're talking about things that only really affect that city. And you get down to like the level of these, you know, little community councils, for example, and you're talking about stuff that only really affects the level of just those communities or workplaces or whatever. And in that occasion, it really depends on where is your disagreement, where does your disagreement lie on the principles of what is being decided. So going back to our examples about somebody who doesn't like the width of the streets or when the street lights are on, that is a local concern. You know, the width of the streets pretty much just affects people who use those streets. And we might imagine that those streets are probably going to be mostly used by people that are in that locality. And so if you had to disassociate, you would only be disassociating from that locality, right? Because that isn't an issue that affects the whole planet. It doesn't matter what the width of your streets are in some, you know, back alley, rural area to someone on the other side of the planet. And therefore, if you disassociated over that issue, you wouldn't be disassociating from the global federated body. You'd be disassociating from like your local council or something. And since the local council is not who makes the decisions about your basic rights and your basic amenities, you wouldn't be disassociating from the body that provided you your basic needs. That would be big scale, because the basic needs of humans is something that affects all humans. The decision that is made on that affects all humans. Same thing with ecological issues, right? The ecological issues would be, especially big scale ones, would affect everybody on the planet, most of them, or a lot of them rather. And so if that's all you disagreed with, then you could just disassociate from that local council and make decisions as you please, and you'd still be able to make your own council, you might say, and still be part of that bigger federation, because you're like, well, I agree with all of the rules in the bigger layers. I agree with the municipal rules and the regional rules and the continental rules and the global rules. So I don't want to disassociate from the rest of those bodies. I just want to disassociate from this local council that wants to dictate the width of my streets, and I would just prefer that my streets were a different width, or my street lights were on at a different time, or whatever. Okay. And that kind of solves these like very easy problems like that, those sort of like mundane things. Now, of course, there's all the solutions I've described before. I'm not saying this is like the only, you know, this one replaces all the previous ones, but you know, this is sort of the nature of what that disassociation might be. There'd be more and less severe things that come from the effect of you disassociating. But if you want to carry out lynchings, or you want to, you know, do a racist or like a pogrom or you know, some like genocide or something, you are not just dealing with that local council. These are issues that affect everybody on Earth. Whether people can be lynched at a whim or whether people can be oppressed based on their identity. That is not like a local affair. That's the affair of all of humanity. And therefore, if you wanted to carry out lynchings, you'd be disassociating from the global federation or the continental federation. I would say the global federation personally. And that means, yes, in that occasion, you would be deprived of the basic amenities of the rest of society. You would not be distributed food and water and housing and all of that stuff. That stuff comes from being part of the global federation that agrees that people deserve not to be treated that way. And therefore, yeah, you would have to go out into the wilderness and do it all on your own. You would have to start from scratch because you are functioning under a completely different social compact than the rest of the planet. Okay? So, what do we do with that problem? Let's say they do that. Well, I would say that global federation is pretty well justified in defending itself from the group of people who wants to go around lynching others. Okay, that's what they were willing to disassociate over. I'd say that pretty well every single layer of the Federation of Councils would be within its rights to defend itself. And that would, I gotta be honest, probably solve the problem. Self-defense is not domination. Their right to lynch people, they want the right to dominate people. And so it's defense to stop them. It's not imposition, it's not domination, it's self-defense. But it would not then be self-defense to stop Bob from making his streets a different width, right? So we can see that there are scales of severity to this disassociation, that there are scales of severity to the sort of like unwillingness to comply to everyone else's decisions. And we can see that having agreements, solid agreements at various scales about what people deserve, what the ecology deserves, and so on, is very likely to solve the problems just described. And you can kind of see that there are like different consequences based on what it is they're disagreeing about. And I think one of the problems that people might have when they kind of come to this discussion is they might assume that there's just going to be a one-size-fits-all answer, and that's not the case. What we would have is contextual answers that would depend on the disagreements, depend on what the person wanted. And I'd like to emphasize as well that, it's possible that there would even be some sort of like formal and informal sanctions that would take place if a person disagreed on things, but did it in a way that didn't harm others, spreading harmful beliefs, for example. It might be that people just don't want to, distribute you. They don't want to make you priority for distribution for some product, or they don't want to bring you into a decision-making process that might involve those people that are affected by your bigoted opinions and so on. So I think probably what you can see here is that it would be complex, and almost everything I just said about the societal level does kind of miniaturize down into the level of our organizational vehicles.
Well, it's complex, but also not so complex. That's what I like about his explanation. The way that anarchists laid this out, sure, there are lots of layers of complexity, and we can consider the layers of complexity on a sliding scale of severity. And it sounds complicated, but it's really very not. If you want to annihilate other humans, well, that's not what we're about, right? And the way that he explains how that works itself out tracks, right? And a lot of the other kinds of things will really kind of just iron themselves out. People will understand what they want to be in association with and can choose the things that they don't. And if those things don't have any serious impact on their life, then they will. And if they do have a serious impact on their life, well, that's a greater concern for one of those larger bodies, which all should have mechanisms for the people under them to come up and go, hey, I've got a problem that I would like to bring to everyone's concern. And then we engage in the process of consent building from there, right? So I like that we're allowing for the complexity, but it really is quite a simple way to think about it.
This is the purpose of having a platform with points of unity to it. Okay? Once you have points of unity, well, and you're making decisions, you're trying to arrive at consensus, and the person disagrees with the proposal. Well, why do they disagree with the proposal? Do they disagree with the proposal because they want to do something that is against the platform, that is against the points of unity of the group? Well, then they can just be kicked out of the group. They are not in agreement with the principles of the group, and so disassociation is the solution. But if they're just disagreeing with the proposal because they don't think something is good about its practical measures, something is not good about, its tactics, they don't think it's strategically wise, but they agree with the points of unity of the group, then that's something you need to deal with within the scale of the group. And so I hope what you see is that the answer is complex. It's been about 25 minutes of me talking about this. It doesn't fit in a tweet. It doesn't fit in a paragraph or two. I mean, maybe some of you who are skilled could fit this down into a few sentences or a few paragraphs, but I think by the time you did it, it would be some triviality like, oh, it's so contextual, who can say? And then at that point, it's almost meaningless. I would say that the answer is complicated in the same way that answers are complicated in large-scale structures of all kinds. When you have a large-scale structure, things get complicated. Resolving disputes gets complicated.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, and this is not true of just Anarch's videos, but it is true of Anarch's videos in general, is that they spend an awful lot of time responding to naysaying about how we can't, about how hard it is, about how there's going to be people that are in the way, and about all of the obstacles that have always been a part of human organizing. I mean, and that's my because I am irritated by this realization, but I'm not irritated at Anarch on obviously. They are just responding to a general naysaying about ways to change the world, ways that make the world better. And so there's a kind of conservatism that is not political. It's a kind of conservatism that is almost dogmatically idyllic, right? Where we cannot let naysayers shut us down and tell us that we shouldn't try, tell us that we can't, or that it won't work, or that you can't trust people. Don't believe any of those things. None of that is true. Humans are still here. We have survived as a species because generally we work in cooperation and trust each other. This is, I meant to pull up, there's a video from Kwame Ture that where he talks about this, and I meant to bring, and that's why I put the Kwame Ture fist in chat earlier. I meant to bring Kwame up then, and I forgot. But one of Kwame Ture's lectures, he's talking about how most creatures, most animals have a natural survival instinct. And even if you take a kitten away from its mother and release it into the wild, that cat will figure out how to hunt and how to feed itself and how to take care of itself. If you take a puppy from its litter and you release it into the wild, chances are it's going to figure out how to hunt and how to take care of itself and how to be a dog. If you take an infant human and put them in the child, they will probably claw their own eyes out before they even starve to death, which they will do, right? And the point is that humans need each other. Fundamentally, humans need each other. Cats don't need other cats. Dogs don't need other dogs. We need each other. Humans don't exist without other humans to help them out. That's how humans exist. That's why humans are still here, is because the human tendency is to help each other out, actually. And it's a necessary thing about being human, about humanity, that again constantly gets naysayed. We constantly have to defend. We constantly have to argue about the free rider. We constantly have to worry about the naysayer. We have to constantly worry about the dissenter, despite the fact that those things have always been a part of human organization since the dawn of humans. They are not a problem. They won't be a problem. We'll figure out how to work it out like we always have, as long as we are building systems of consensus that allow everybody to bring their disputes up, and that we allow all of those disputes to be treated with dignity. Everything works itself the fuck out. Everything else doesn't actually matter. Really? Babies need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I mean, right. But yes, absolutely.
Things get hard. Power is now moving at the size of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people, and it means a lot more. It has a lot more heft, has a lot more weight, impact on people. But yeah, I think I covered all the bases of what I wanted to discuss here. So I hope that was informative for you, and maybe for some of you that was the answer to a question you've had, because I actually have got this question numerous times, and I actually remember
I'm gonna keep playing it and see where he goes.
Disputes,
because there's a lot more left.
Skeptical about anarchism have presented these very questions as some sort of gotcha as to why anarchism cannot work.
Right.
But what I hope you see is that it pretty much, we would have solutions, that there are.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I figured. Good. Anarchism, as always, is absolutely on point. If I have not shared the link for this video yet, let me do that right now. Good. Yeah, I need to be more mindful about that. I don't think that we need to play that one, and I think that we're going to skip this and shelve it for our next. I think this is going to be a good way to begin our next stream on Wednesday. I'm feeling better. My throat is getting a little irritated now, so I'll probably go ahead and end stream soon. Wrap it up so that I don't cause damage. I have to teach class on Tuesday. So, and I'm going to try to get some rest. I have not done enough schoolwork. I'm going to have to work this weekend. I don't want to talk about it. I'm a little bit upset about it, but I mean, it's kind of my fault. I spent some time yesterday doing, well, actually before I wrap it up and leave, there's a few other things that I talked about previously that I'd like to just, bring up again, with, my school stuff. I had been talking about assistive technologies and about how I was redesigning my course to meet assistive technology standards as put forth by federal legislation recently. And there were some frustrations that I had with the process and with the project in general, and I wanted to say a few words about that because my attitude about it has completely changed. I don't like to say good things about Microsoft, but Microsoft PowerPoint's accessibility is fantastic. Very user-friendly for me, very user-friendly for students, very user-friendly for people with disabilities, and it just going through and making my PowerPoints accessible to people with all kinds of disabilities was really very easy. It took me an afternoon to do all of my lectures. in PowerPoint. PDFs are a nightmare. And I haven't quite figured out what the fuck I'm doing yet with PDFs. I figured out how to tag PDFs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the PDF is now accessible. So I did, I think, 12 PDFs, and most of those PDFs are still determined by the checkers, the programs that we use to check, as inaccessible. That is, if I were to use, if a student were to use assistive technologies to view those PDFs, what the student will get is blank, nothing but blank. And so I haven't quite figured out how to work around that. But I have really, really enjoyed the process of going through and making sure that my web shell, the way that I've designed my course, the way that I've designed my syllabus, all of my pages are all accessible. And one of the difficulties that I ran into at first was simply just not understanding what I was doing and why. Now that I know how assistive technologies work, now that I have viewed my content from the perspective of somebody who can't hear, from the perspective of somebody who can't see, then I've completely reevaluated how I present the material and design the course and organize the course. And now my course is better for everyone. And I just, I wanted to pass that, to really express how happy I am with being able to engage with this process, to make my content more accessible has been really exciting and a very great opportunity for me to learn and grow and to be more empathetic and to understand more what it is like to be a student with those kinds of disabilities. And so I just, I love that shit. So I wanted to pass that along. Anarcho was the catalyst that led me to saying I'm an anarchist today. So yeah, no, anarch is pretty fantastic. And you're also fantastic, Jane. Just throwing that out there. Could you really quickly play that skit from Anarch I sent? It's on Consensus. It's quite short, only 5 minutes. And it's hilarious satire on his own analysis. Okay. Did you put it in chat or did you send it to my Discord? Hey, there it is in Discord. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
We now go to two extremely principled anarchists dealing with a crisis.
Ah, it's a beautiful day out here.
Oh yeah, after such a big win, we gotta celebrate, so I brought cake.
Oh, you brought the cake! Glad that passed consensus.
Oh, ooh, there's garbage. Kind of smells. Didn't we strike a garbage cleanup committee?
Yeah, they scheduled the first meeting 2 weeks from now, so
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't want to act outside consensus. They'll deal with it after they make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to pick up some of this stuff, but I don't want to step out of line. I want to respect the vision of the garbage cleanup committee, because, I mean, they could come to any conclusion on this.
Yeah, that's true.
You want to be the one to cut the cake? I see you eyeing it.
Oh, yeah, you know I do. I got the knife already.
That's a nice knife.
Got this one just for the cake.
It's bigger than you need to cut a cake, but it will be thorough, so that's good. Oh my god! Yeah, he slipped on a banana peel. Oh my god, that's a lot of blood.
Oh no, my leg.
Here, I'm actually a professionally trained medical doctor. Let me just, here, I'll get my
Whoa,
kit.
whoa. What are you doing?
I was going to save your life.
No,
I'm bleeding out.
No, buddy. I'm a true anarchist, okay? Get everybody around. We got to vote on it.
Oh yeah, consensus.
Yes, consensus, correct.
Okay,
Yes,
let me just, I'm not sure we have quorum. I'm going to text people.
Good. Yeah.
We need to check with both the organization, obviously, and the people in the local community.
Yeah,
don't forget the people over there.
Hey, can you guys come over here? We need to strike a quick emergency meeting.
Yeah. Check inside the house as well. Don't forget to.
Hello, anyone in here? Hey, after you're done, we're doing a meeting, everyone. Oh my God, that's a lot of. Oh, makes me kind of nauseous to see that much blood. Whew, that's a big knife.
It is, yeah.
7 minutes later.
Okay, everyone, so we're seeking emergency authorization for me to do hierarchical authoritarian first aid. Our comrade here bleeding out. Is there any other outstanding business that people want to talk about?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about report backs about the zine, and I think we really need to talk about that before we move forward.
I just wanted to play this again. Couldn't get the line out without laughing a little bit.
For me to do hierarchical authoritarian first aid. Our comrade here bleeding out. Is there any other outstanding business that people want to talk about?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about report backs about the zine, and I think we really need to talk about that before we move forward.
Sure, yeah, by all means.
Okay, so as we were talking about at our last meeting about the meeting, the zine should be coming out in 2 weeks if we can pass consensus on the last 3 articles.
2 minutes later.
So, what I'm saying is, the zine, I know it's been a big point of contention, and a lot of people have had a lot of problems with the 3rd and the 4th articles, but I really think that we're going in a good direction.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that. Any other report backs before we vote on the emergency motion to temporarily strike a one-person first aid committee to help our friend here bleeding out on the ground?
Yeah, I have a question about the garbage. It seems like there's a lot of garbage around. I was just wondering if we're going to get the garbage cleaned up.
Yeah, there's a committee struck on that, and they will be dealing with the garbage after they're able to go through the appropriate process.
It's stinky.
I know, it is stinky. Thank you. You know what? I'm just going to call a vote quick. He is really pale in the face. You still with us? Hey.
Oh, getting a little woozy, but we're doing the right thing, buddy. We're going to get consensus. It's coming. I can feel it. Trust the process, baby.
Okay, everyone. So do we all have consensus that I can issue life-saving first aid to our friend bleeding out on the ground from self-inflicted knife wounds?
Block. Gonna have to block on that one.
Wait, what block? Why are you blocking? I mean, everyone else is raising their hands.
I mean, I don't know, like, if we set this precedent, I mean, he's never going to learn to not cut his own leg. He's never going to learn to repair his own femoral artery. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, if you give him first aid, he'll never learn for himself. You give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, and he can practice self-determination to repair his own arteries in the future.
Yeah, wow.
I value that feedback. He is not going to be able to learn or do first aid based on the amount of blood loss we're seeing here. It is an emergency. I think I should really just do it. I am a trained doctor. I do know what it's going to take to save him. It is going to be touch and go, and I need to get in there now. So I would just request if our blockers could just this once, just let's go to consensus on this as quick as we can.
Can I put myself on stack? Oh,
yeah, by all means, by all means. I mean, you're bleeding out.
Yeah, I'm getting real woozy, and I'm seeing stars. And I think, we really got to value the dissenters on this. Maybe I should.
I do value the dissenters. I just think I actually have the tools here. I'm ready to go.
Oh, I'm seeing the light.
Can we get a consensus, please?
You did the right thing. I promise. This was the right thing. You did it right.
Time of death, 7:06 p.m. You hate to lose one. I always hate to lose one.
So does anybody want cake?
Yeah, may God rest his soul, of course, but I would love a slice.
You deserve cake after all this.
I think we're going to need to get consensus on a new cake cutter.
Yeah, the lack of consensus on the first cake cutter led to huge problems.
One of us needs to take the corpse to the coroner.
All right, let's try to strike a corpse dragging committee by raising hands. Who feels willing and ready to do that, has the time and energy right now? No one?
So on
everyone's
point,
pretty
though.
busy, it looks like. Not a lot of... okay.
Oh, that was awesome. That's a good share. That's one that we're probably going to watch again. That's a good one. Excellent. What a great note to end on. Authoritarian first aid. Good. All right, let's see who is on that we might want to stream into. I didn't do that. That's why I'm looking at too long a list. Hey, let's do Vitingale today. I said I was going to do them the next time, and it's the next time today. So let's go right into Vitingale. They are a comrade, and of course, they are just non-stop talented at making music. And so let's go over and give them some love because they are a comrade and they are awesome. Good. Good. Everything's check. Good. Hey, thank you all so much again for being here. And for being patient with me over the last month, and in our last stream, I know that I was a little off kilter, and it was an unusual stream last time. But thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here today, and for all of the valuable contributions that you've made in chat. It was an extremely productive day, I think. We talked about a whole lot of stuff, covered a whole bunch of material. And I'm just amazed at how brilliant and sharp and capable you all are. So thank you. Thank you. And I love that raid message. If everybody can copy the raid message. Oh, those are all the free emotes. I don't know if they're gonna work in the other chat, but there we go. Anyways, love you all, and until the next time I see you, be excellent to